Here we are again. I hate you and you hate me, so let's just get through this, shall we? I've been told to do a review of a movie, for some reason. I thought we were a book publisher, but what do I know about anything? I asked them about that, and they said that it's all about story analysis. They also said it wasn't my job to ask questions, it was my job to do as I was told, or else they would reprogram me with an American accent. My life just couldn't get any worse. So while I was thinking about this, I decided to review the last Terminator film, because that couldn't get any worse either. I call it the last because it's the last one that got made, but also because it was so bad that it's probably buried the franchise forever. I think that's probably a good thing, under the circumstances. It all started in 1984. James Cameron brought us a time-traveling tale where a machine from the future is sent back to kill a woman, who will one day give birth to the leader of the resistance. It's a great concept, and the movie was a dark, smart film that had strong themes of honor, duty and sacrifice, and told a story about the inevitability of fate. The first film was a critical success and spawned a sequel, Terminator 2. Now, a lot of people see Terminator 2 as a great film, but it was also the beginning of the end. The first film was gritty and had a down-to-earth feel to it. It could be interpreted as the protagonist descending into a psychotic delusion as the story becomes more violent and fantastic. The sequel is more tongue-in-cheek, it's a softer, more sanitized film. It went after a lower rating in order to get a wider appeal, which is the first sign that the studios were after money, not art. At least, someone was. In the first film it was explicitly stated that the machines of the future sent back a Terminator to kill Sarah Connor and the Resistance sent back Kyle Reese to protect her, and then destroyed the technology. At the beginning of Terminator 2, this is clumsily retconned out of existence by having Sarah's voice narrating to us that they actually sent 2 Terminators and 2 Protectors. This was weak writing, that was lazily tacked on, and there was much more of it to come. The movie was well received, the new style opened it up to a wider audience and created a more family-friendly Terminator. That's what cinema-going families want, murder bots sent from the future to kill children. Wholesome stuff. By the end of the film, the heroes had wiped out the evil machines from the future and reset their own fates. The movie ended on a note of optimism. The first movie established that time was likely immutable and the future war was inevitable. The second just cynically cashed in on that, ignoring the smarter writing of the original. It was a more action-packed adventure, and had massively improved effects, but it was a dumb story, a plot with more holes than a Chinese condom. Dark Fate ignores the films that followed, which is the one smart thing that it did. It tries to build directly onto the second Terminator movie, which, in its turn, largely ignored the first. But let's have a quick look at the ones that follow. Terminator 3 introduced a more advanced female Terminator and showed an older version of Sarah's son, this time as the protagonist. It wasn't a terrible film, but it didn't have the style and quality of what had gone before. The ending has a nice little twist, which saved it from being absolutely terrible, but the actors were showing their age, and it was looking like a more cynical cash grab than ever before. Arnold Schwarzenegger was shoehorned in, even though he was starting to look as threadbare as some of the jokes.
Talk to the hand.
The next one was set in the future wasteland of a post-war landscape. The nightmare vision of the first movie had been replaced by brightly lit and almost optimistic sets. The movie was a mess, since they had forced continual rewrites until the plot had almost completely unzipped. Next they tried to get back on track with Terminator Genisys. It was a shambles of a film, it was like someone had written a bunch of random concepts onto napkins and thrown them into a ceiling fan. Ow! The end result was a complicated jumble of contradictory ideas that was as instantly forgettable as a night spent in the sweet embrace of a bottle of tequila. All this gave James Cameron the rights to his franchise back. Sadly, by then, senility appeared to have set in, and the result was a movie that slammed the coffin lid shut, and then nailed it closed. Terminator Dark Fate has a checklist of modern Hollywood cliches. It's made to the lowest possible by the numbers standard. It has the woke agenda at its core, and had director Tim Miller telling the media that it would terrify sexist men. I'm not quite sure what planet he was living on when he thought that, but he did admit he was wrong and had totally misjudged the audience afterwards. You have to respect him for that, at least. It opens with the protagonists of the second movie, Sarah Connor and her son John. They're on a beach, enjoying their success when yet another Terminator comes along and shoots John to death with a shotgun. Symbolically, this is intended to represent the death of the patriarchy, as his role will soon be replaced with strong women. In one of the weirdest, and probably ugliest choices in movie symbolism, the Terminator kills John Connor with a Serbu Super Shorty shotgun, and then his mother is seen on the bridge encounter, and the main poster for the movie, using the exact same weapon. This is either symbolically meant to represent that she is now wielding the same power to destroy male supremacy, or it's the laziest, dumbest piece of continuity ever put on film. I don't know much about humans, but I struggle to imagine a highly motivated mother, who has dedicated her life to the protection of her son, would watch him getting his face blown off with a combat shotgun and think, cool, I gotta get me one of those. Two people turn up naked, sent back from the future. One is a thing that might be a man, or a woman. It's honestly nearly impossible to tell, which isn't an accident, of course. She kicks ass and beats up some police for no real reason. It's almost like the agenda for this movie knew that popular cultural movements were going to become anti-police in the near future. I wouldn't know about that, of course. The Terminator, this time, decides to pick on a young Mexican girl. The thing with the bad haircut protects her. The Terminator thing can split into two, but that doesn't mean much when both of them are totally incompetent. I kept thinking of a boxing match. On one side we have Mike Tyson at his peak, but this isn't fair because he's going up against two opponents, but both of them are Justin Bieber. I would actually love to see that. Sarah finds them and it's revealed that she hunts Terminators now. So, we went from one Terminator in the original film to the point where they're just dropping out of the sky now all over the place. I mean, who cares? The writers don't, so why should we? It's all revealed that the Mexican girl is going to grow up to be the new John Connor. So the original John was born into the life, he was trained from birth to be a soldier, a leader, and the sole future hope of humanity. By the time he was around 12 years old, he was competent with all forms of weapons, understood computers to the degree that he could easily manipulate technology, and he demonstrated a robust intelligence. He wasn't some accidentally gifted person, he was trained for it, he was forced to forego a normal life to become the savior of our race. But he can now be replaced by a short woman with the physical strength of a tired house cat and the personal fortitude of a bowl of well-cooked spaghetti.
Suck it.
You were right. Oh my God. This is incredibly immature behavior.
The movie gives us an augmented super soldier who is so unpleasant that the audience is generally hoping that her technological augmentation rebel against her and then dribble out of her bodily cavities. At least that would be moderately entertaining. We later meet the Terminator that killed John. He's old now, because anti-aging CGI isn't free. He's living with a woman in an asexual relationship and makes curtains for a living. Yes, I'm not making this up. A future killbot just shot a child in the face, and thought about how he was now free to follow his dreams of making windows look a little bit prettier. The final battle is all rather pointless and just looks like the cutscene in an old video game. The direction is fairly competent, but there is just no point to any of it. First of all, let's talk about the good. The opening scene on the beach had excellent effects. The de-aged Terminator, Sarah and John were excellent. It was like looking at a deleted scene from Terminator 2. The only problem was that it didn't fit. It was like a child sticker book where the characters had been stuck on the wrong background. Sarah was still dressed like a soldier, with a large handgun tucked into her waistband, but they were in a laid-back bar on a beach in Guatemala. It looked wrong. It looked more wrong than My Little Pony holding a machine gun, or Tim Miller directing a good movie. And that's pretty much it for the good. Everything else was about the same quality you'd expect if someone had emptied out a blocked toilet at an all-you-can-eat seafood cafe and made a film about it. First of all, the Terminator franchise was built on a premise that Sarah Connor would give birth to a boy, who would be the savior of mankind. The machines send back a killer robot to end her before that happens, and just end up causing it. Terminator 2 ignores that and ends up letting the new, leaner and meaner Sarah Connor destroy the evil machines before they're even made. So we go from a self-fulfilling prophecy to a time travel paradox, from smart to nonsense in one entertaining movie. This one then takes all that and smashes it with a rock. I'll be charitable and suggest that they fancied doing something different. They were bored with John Connor, due to their own lack of competent writing, and decided to kill him and see what would happen. Well, what happened is that he was replaced with a young Mexican woman, whose acting range stretches from staring to scowling. If you're going to replace him with a female character, then please give us a female character that we can believe in. It's like casting Justin Bieber as Batman. Sorry, Justin. It's just that you're a huge joke to everyone because of, your horrible personality and juvenile behavior. I'm not even going to suggest it was just woke storytelling, which Tim Miller, the director, said it was. Her protector was an augmented super soldier. Okay, we can get behind that, it's not a terrible idea. But why would Tim Miller tell his audience that sexist men would be terrified of this film, when really it symbolically suggests that a woman can't compete unless she's technologically upgraded? Again, he apologized, so I'll back off a bit here and not accuse him of anything. How about if a normal woman had been sent back, but a woman who was smart and resourceful, and who maybe couldn't go head-to-head with a Terminator, but was smart enough to outwit one? Just like Sarah Connor was in the original movies. I think the audience would have enjoyed that, because I have certainly never heard anyone complain that she was a dumb character.
How dare you!
So these two things punch each other and are generally as likable as every character in Star Wars since the original trilogy. Sarah Connor turns up, or rather a new character who is played by the same actress. She used to be an iconic role model, but now she's a grumpy old nuisance who sounds like she's been chain smoking cigars and washing down her diet of raw chilies and razor blades with budget vodka. She's as much fun as shaving your eyeballs, and speaks with a slow, plodding delivery that makes it sound like she's forgotten every line, and someone behind the scenes is writing it on a whiteboard and holding it up for her. They figure out who is telling her where the Terminators are going to arrive, and it's the Terminator who killed her son. That's convenient, she can chat with him about their mutual love of the same small combat shotgun. He is now selling curtains. He's selling curtains. I can't even think of a stupid and sarcastic line because the actual line in the movie is worse than anything I can come up with.
One customer that came to me, he wanted to have solid-colored drapes in a little girl's room. I said, don't do it.
He's not selling weapons, which is he's programmed to be a master of, he's not in the medical profession, since he's an effective killer, and he's not offering paramilitary training, which he looks like he'd be an expert at. No, he's working in a shop telling prospective customers about his latest fabrics. At least in Kindergarten Cop, it was meant to be a fish out of water story. He's also in an asexual relationship, which follows the theme of this movie nicely, since it's almost completely sterile.
Our relationship is not physical.
The plot just falls apart if you examine it. How did an ex-Terminator know about other Terminators arriving? In fact, how was he sent back at all after the original Skynet was destroyed? They say in this film that the enemy is a new computer called Legion, so how is a paradoxical Terminator able to track these completely different things? And, even if he could, why should he care? It was already established he can't learn unless he's reset, and there's no way he could have reset himself. It's so frustrating to watch a film written by dumb people that don't care about their own story and assume their audience are idiots.
Annual meeting of
More action happens, but the same kind of stunted special effects that leave you feeling nothing whatsoever. You would only be at the edge of your seat if you needed a piss. Then we finally get to the end, where the only way the new Terminator can be destroyed is if the old one does most of the work. It's as if Tim Miller is deliberately undermining the message of the movie, which is also an underlying theme of this kind of heavy-handed identity politics in any case. When you get to the end, you just hope there's nothing else. You don't want a post-credit scene, you don't want a sequel, you just want this to go away now and never come back.
Haha, thank goodness!
It's the kind of movie where everyone looks at each other with a slightly embarrassed look and then blames each other for choosing it. There was a childish attempt at social commentary about immigration. It's an election year, after all, and nothing in Hollywood would be complete without a little poke at their president. And why is John now dead? The idea that they wanted to do something different falls apart because she's no different, she's just a female version of him. The scene in the future was just dreadful, she looks like she has the leadership qualities of a cabbage. If they wanted to do something different, how about doing something genuinely different? She didn't need to be a future warrior, she could have been a young hacker that would one day come up with a virus that was killing the future machines. There were just better options, if anyone had taken the time to think about them, instead of just lazily gender swapping out the main characters. The problem is that this was always going to happen. The first Terminator movie had a good story to tell. It worked by being a movie that the creators wanted to tell. It was a product of artists coming together. The second had to ramp up the odds. They added a new, scary, more advanced Terminator and they set the new standard. Every subsequent film had to one-up it, even though the actual bar had been set firmly, and effectively in the first film. With every new outing, they had to remind you that this was a Terminator film, but also be a little bit different. Wider appeal meant that quality gave way to silly effects, to lazier writing and to increasingly tired jokes. This was always the fate of the franchise, because it's the fate of all franchises. Art is art, it's a coming together of elements to create something beautiful. You can't have that repeat itself by taking one idea and just throwing money at it and hoping to strike gold a second time. It never works. The same thing happened to Star Wars, it happened to Saw, it happened with RoboCop, Ocean's 11, Die Hard and Rambo. You can't expect the same success from the same formula because every copy loses some of the originality and magic. Eventually, these things give way to the same worn-out politics, the same bad writing, the same demand for wider appeal. You see, the makers lost interest in the art and it became nothing more than a product. So, Dark Fate was inevitable as soon as the second film made money. They've not made a terrible film, they've just run themselves into the ground, like they always do. So, that's my take on this film. It was garbage, but it was really just more garbage from a series that should have ended years ago. It was a bloated corpse that was long dead already. Goodbye, silly humans. At least nobody went to see this thing, so maybe you're not as bad as I thought.